The meta on Anubis is as follows for the playoffs. If you are a team like the San Francisco Shock, which can run a Bastion, then what you can do is you send your Bastion up and around here, you set up with the double shield, and your Bastion plonks down here and rains damage in. That forces the defending team to drop off the high ground onto the point, because they just can't handle all of that damage if they are running the Reaper Doomfist kind of composition. Therefore, most teams on defense started playing the Reaper, but with a Mei. So they would run the Mei in order to counter the Bastion comp that was going to come out from their opponent. The thing is, Shock know that Titans are never going to run Bastion. They're just never going to run Bastion. So they don't need to run a Mei. They don't need to run any weird shit. They just are going to run the default. The fact that Titans almost won 2 maps while playing like absolute shit means we were so close to having an actually good grand finals. I agree with that, Simper Turtle. I think if Titans had played to their peak or to their normal level, we would have had a very competitive, 4-2, 4-3 kind of nuts final. I still think the Shock would have won. I think they're the better team. But I would say that the Shock played up to their potential and the Titans choked in this final. And yet they were still able to keep it somewhat close at times. The default fights on Anubis are a lot to do with how you get halts, how you take shields, this kind of stuff. So, first engagement, halt around the side, Janu gets an off angle, punch from Haxal, sends Sinatra flying backwards, I believe. Kimchi Mandu, thank you for the 2 months. Hello, Sideshow, I'm your lawyer. Eat more pizza. I'm not sure lawyers are dietitians, but thank you, Kimchi Mandu. Maybe I will eat more pizza. So, again, the thing that I stressed a lot on Lijiang is that Titans are very good in neutral fights, because in neutral fights, their tanks take space very quickly, which you just saw them do, and Haxal is excellent at being able to punch away their tanks, like Smurf and Choyobin. And once you displace their tanks, you win just by virtue of all of the space that you control. Look how much space Titans controls. So Titans have dominated this neutral fight. They play the neutral fights better than any team in the league. I really believe that when they play to their potential. So Violet dies. Striker went for a flank. Wasn't successful. Sinatra goes for another flank. Joyobin dies. Yada yada. This is lost. But that was the kind of stuff that I was expecting and hoping from the Titans this entire time, is they are the king of the neutrals. So that was a well-played fight by the Vancouver Titans. How do I feel about Choi getting Finals MVP? I actually didn't feel comfortable voting for a Finals MVP because I didn't feel like I had watched enough of the game. Having said that, when I voted for Finals MVP, I was leaning towards, I suppose this might be a little bit weird, but I was leaning towards Architect, or possibly Rascal, but I was leaning more towards Architect because I felt like they dominated the maps where he was in a little bit more, and he was part of the reason that the Titans just crumbled was that they were running the Bastion comp on Eichenwald where they weren't expecting it, and on Gibraltar they had a dominant performance. So that was where my head was at following like the first viewing of the grand finals. At the moment, like two maps through the grand finals so far, I think the Violets had a hell of a performance, but I do agree with the Choyobin pick at the moment. Because it's hard to say Striker or Sinatra when, or Rascal or Architect when they each won 2 maps, right? So it's a difficult one. It's a hard MVP, finals MVP to pick. All right. Oh, whoa. MTG Vindicate. Came for the VOD review, stayed for the rank feeding. Thank you, MTG Vindicate. Are we going to get Gauntlet VOD analysis? Yes. Yes. We're going to get Gauntlet VOD analysis tomorrow, actually. If you think Titans are the best neutral fighting team, why do you still think Shock is the better team? Because Shock were much better on escort and hybrid maps with their Bastion compositions and with their understanding of how payload segments work. And so they're better at like controlling momentum in fights, better at utilizing their ultimates, all of which don't really... That isn't part of the neutral game. And so then Titans were forced to kind of either take one of Shock's maps away or just dominate the control maps. And they weren't able to. Dopo W, thank you for the 8 months. Harsher to Outlaws might be the fire they need. I would expect Outlaws to make a couple more changes as well, at least. I mean, I would expect Outlaws to make at least 3 more changes. So I think Outlaws might not be a half bad team next year. Like, people in the offseason are going to meme on teams like Outlaws and Dallas, but I think both of those rosters, particularly Dallas, I think will look very different next year. Flame said there's another announcement coming this week. Dope. Dope. I have no idea what they're going to announce at the end of this week. But if I was to guess, I think they're going to probably pick up 2 new support players. And an off-tank, if I was to guess. And maybe another coach. Okay, let's have a look. No, I am actually guessing. I don't have any inside information about what the Outlaws are planning. I actually don't know any of their moves. I always preface the juice with the juice. I don't say that I'm guessing stuff. That's the coward's way out. I knew this one. That's true. I did know that Harsher was joining the Outlaws. But I never hinted to you guys that Harsher was joining the Outlaws. I never guessed that Harsher might join the Outlaws. That would just come out of fucking nowhere, wouldn't it? That would be obvious. Okay. Anyway, let's get back into the VOD review. So Titans come in, coalescences, they cross the beams. Very dangerous. But they're trying to force their way through a tiny little choke point, and the Shock are kind of battering them. Okay. From what I remember, the Titans really struggled to push point B here. And it might be fucking monotonous to go through this. Am I wrong, chat? I seem to remember this taking a while. Not wrong. That's unfortunate. Okay, so aggressive. This I really like. This is what I was talking about a little bit on Lijiang, right? If the enemy team has beat and you have a flux, then it's super easy to force out beat from them. You just flux them. And at the moment, I think there was only one person caught in that flux, but Slime's going to use beat just to keep himself alive and try and push with it. And then if they push into you, you can kite it. So beat comes out. Choyubin's going to stay on the high ground. Uses kinetic grasp to escape. They have now effectively kited and forced beat out of the Titans. The problem with a map like Anubis, and the reason that I've never really been a fan of Anubis, is because it's a clusterfuck. And if you lose one player before you get to the point on attack, you've basically lost. So it feels so disingenuous to analyze these fights as if there was a chance for the Titans if they lose one player. In order to cap Anubis, you have to either approach the point without taking any damage or forcing any cooldowns, or you need to have a massive ult advantage or an early pick. And if you don't have one of the three, it's so hard to push. So it just feels kind of dumb to be sat here talking about these fights until I see one that's actually useful. Alright, so gonna move around the right. Haxal gets killed. That is a loss for you, my dudes. Striker gets the kills, yada yada yada. Haxal is dying first a lot, but that's because he's trying to make space for his team. And that might sound weird, like why is a Doomfist trying to make space for his team? But he's trying to like punch people so that the shock back off a little bit. Like he's trying to create a threat of a pick so that shock are forced to back up. Because otherwise, if you're trying to push through this choke point, shock are just going to spam you from everywhere. If you're trying to push through this choke point, shock are just going to spam you from everywhere. So Haxal kind of has to do something. Otherwise, how else do you stop the shock from just running at you when you come through the choke? I mean, I guess you could use ults, but you don't really want to use ults when you engage. Striker's again hiding. Sinatra just punches Haxal into the dust. I mean, that isn't a first kill because Haxal was making space. That's just a first kill because Haxal didn't counterpunch. And Tizzy didn't body block for him with Fortify or anything. He just tanked it to the face. So far, Titans are just running in and dying. And yeah, honestly, Titans are going to start to get boomed at this point because Titans are down 0-2. They've lost on both of their map picks, especially Lijiang, which they were undefeated on all control maps. The Titans looked boomed when they came in, and now they've got to be in a real bad state. So, okay, so this is quite nice. They're going to halt into a... halt into Flux. They know that Moth doesn't have his beat, but you need to be there needs to be some follow up. Like the execution of the combo halt Flux was all right, but what happens now? What now? One of the reasons why they're not able to capitalize on it is because the Moira gets thrown up in the air, but even so, I don't know. Like, what's the Titans' plan there? They just traded Fluxes and neither team used beat. Very strange, honestly. Sominsu goes for a flank, gets smacked back into the wall. They use Sound Barrier to engage, but they get kited. Oh, I suppose they don't get kited. Actually, they actually find value on Striker. The aim from Shock was to kite. Was this the one where they won? Because it must have been. So Haxal's making space for his team like that by punching Smurf back. It's just previously he's been caught a lot because he's got to dodge the rock, dodge halts, dodge counter punches, stuff like that. But Haxal makes space for his team. He takes the sound barrier, and he's deep in behind. Striker isn't quite able to get out because he was using Wraith form and tried to escape. And Haxal is able to escape because he has Meteor Strike. So fair enough. Pretty nicely played. Now, why didn't Moth use his barrier? Did Moth just not have it in time? Moth just has barrier now. Where is Moth? Why doesn't Moth use barrier? When he sees Striker really weak, and he knows that the opposing team has already used Flux, and has already used Sound Barrier. Oh, he does, he's just too slow. And it only catches on him, Smurf, and Sinatra. That's just a misplay by Moth. A very rare misplay by Moth, I will say. I think the idea there was just to kite back into the corner, use the sound barrier, and push them back, but, yeah. I believe they were trying to force Moth's beat with Flux, so that, says SRW Reese, so that they can later beat and rush. Then when Moth doesn't beat, but the Shock uses Coalescence, Coalescence, they assume Moth doesn't have beat and beats into them for picks. The problem with that thought process is that if they were intending, the Titans were intending to Flux here and force out the beat, what Shock could have done is, okay, they use beat, but then they just, as the Titans come in through here, they Flux them and force their beat. And then both teams just walk back over to the point. I guess. The thing is, why would Moth use beat when there was no potential for anyone to die? You know, if you get fluxed over here and you can see that nobody's attacking you? I don't know. I think it was a weird series of ults by both teams. I don't think it really, a bunch of them didn't really make sense. Whoop. Yeah, no, RSW Reese. I think that honestly, that might have been their plan. I just don't know whether it's like a... I don't think it's a great plan, but it might have been their plan. So, yeah. If Titans didn't Flux, wouldn't Shock have been able to push on their Flux? Yeah, but they had beat for it. I guess it's always better for Titans to reduce the amount of ultimates on the field. When there's more ults, it favors the defenders. Like, more ults for both teams, you know. Okay, so a bit of a weird round, honestly. The Shock really got smacked on point A. Like, the Titans played point A really well, as they normally do in the neutral fights. And then the Titans fed a lot on point B and eventually won in a very strange manner. I don't know whether there's too much you can really take away from that. Okay, but on this side, you've got the Vancouver Titans defending. The Titans... So, here was my big problem with Shock's plan on Anubis. You don't have Rascal and Architect in, which is fine. But you can still run a Bastion comp here. And it's very... It seems, at least to me, to be very easy to execute. When you watch teams like Atlanta and New York take Anubis point A with Bastion, it very much seems like it's super methodical. You come around here, you use a couple of abilities to be able to get in through this choke point. Once you're through that choke point, you come up here, you wait until you have all your cooldowns back, you put your Sigma shield out, you put your Orisa shield down, you plonk the Bastion on the high ground, you do a lot of damage out here. Then, once the defenders have scuttled back to the point because they can't... Like, what the fuck are the Titans going to do if there's a Bastion right there? How are they going to fight that? Especially because you don't even have to play that aggressive. You can literally put your Sigma shield and your Orisa shield down there and play from the health pack room. Just like on the staircase. And the Titans would have to push into a choke point to be able to kill you. So it's very hard to displace the Bastion once they're in Mega. So normally the defenders drop off the point. And then the attacking team's Bastion sets up like here, or sometimes here. And you just have great sightlines all down here. It normally leads to a point A take 100% of the time against this comp. Striker and Sinatra don't play May Bastion, I think, ever. But because this strat seems so easy, and because it's a direct counter to what Titans always runs, I would just expect Shock to have... to run it anyway. So I was puzzled why they didn't run the Bastion here, because it directly hard counters at least from what I've seen, what Titans are running on defense.
5, 4, 3, 2,
but
attackers incoming. Defend objective A.
instead, they just try and fight the neutral. My problem with it is Titans are good in the neutral, and this choke point is really hard to push when you're doing Reaper Doomfist versus Reaper Doomfist. So it just seems like a bad strat to me. It just seems like they didn't really think about who their opponent was, which is weird because their strategies for all of the other points were really good. Okay, so they come in. Sinatra punches, but he misses. Sinatra going for the same kind of punch, where he goes for the front line and tries to push them back, but he misses. Haxel gets halted, so he's not able to properly counterpunch Sinatra, but does actually manage to do a bit of a counterpunch. Haxel uppercuts Choyobin, but gets rocked. Tizzy's holding his ground. Haxel back around the side, is trying to ensure that the front line is being protected. And Sinatra dies. Sinatra isn't the kind of Doomfist, in my opinion, that plays the same way as Haxel, where he helps his front line, helps his tanks that much. Like, normally, the Shock plays 4 players behind an Orisa shield, and then 2 players, as in Haxel and Choyobin, off on a side angle, doing like damage there, threatening picks with, oh, why am I saying Haxel? What the fuck am I talking about? Sinatra and Choyobin, doing like threatening picks with Sinatra. That's like their normal style. Whereas the Titans' normal style is to play kind of 5 people here, including Haxel, who's gonna push forwards, and then So Min-Soo on his own at the back. That's how the two styles of the teams tend to differ. And it makes Titans much better at being able to win these neutral fights, I think. But Shock are very good at being able to spread out, control territory, squeeze their opponents. They get great value out of ultimates and stuff like that. But Sinatra just kind of got bopped there. Nice boop to put Tizzy on the low ground. But again, Haxel just keeps doing these little punches onto people, punishing. So Min-Soo flanks. Striker turns around. Janu gets the kill. Haxel punches directly into the team, kills Choyobin. Again, going for tanks. This just seems to be the way that the Titans play, and it's what makes them so good at neutral fights. So I think it was a bad decision, strategically, to play the default composition and try and win engagements against the Titans here. Because, yeah, Shock are great at getting value out of their ults, but this choke point's so hard to push through that it's just so hard to get value out of ults anyway. So Min-Soo drops down, does a little bit of damage. Okay, they push forward with the Coalescence. Sinatra does actually punch Janu, trying to gain position, but he just gets halted back towards them anyway. Striker was in the backlines, but he got forced out pretty early on. And Haxel, because he has the Meteor Strike, is playing very aggro. So Min-Soo, I don't know what the fuck he was doing, but I guess he's just killing people that are in the backlines, and then he's going to flank and go aggro. They can't punish Haxel effectively. Even though they've got all of this space, Titans are still willing to take engagements with them. Beat is used. Great flux from Janu. I mean, arguably, you could have waited a little bit longer, but if you wait too much longer, then they're going to scatter like rats. So instead, he catches Violet, Sinatra, and Choyobin. A lot of damage done to Sinatra there. They finish him off. Choyobin's also going to die. Just nicely secured. And that aggressive beat from Moth, just... they can't get anything done with it. But why did they use the aggressive beat? Because they've taken so much effort to get through that choke point, they feel like they should commit now, because they finally got through the choke point. But the problem was they weren't really in a position to win the fight, and I don't know whether they even realized that Janu had ult. I mean, it's 2 minutes in, he should have ult, but I don't know. They made a play. They tried to clutch it. And now they're back with 2 minutes on the clock, trying to get in through this choke point. Now they do have an advantage in terms of the bongo, the supercharger. But they don't have that beat anymore, so it's going to be difficult to put up a supercharger when you can just get beated into. See what they do. So, attack with Coalescence, defend with Coalescence. Janu gets halted in. Sinatra goes for an aggressive play, gets punished because it wasn't well synced up with the rest of his team. Flux, but that's countered by beat. Of course it is. Striker doesn't find anything. Really nice rock by Janu as well. The bongo is used, and the bongo gets used in the midst of all of this chaos, so it can't really be taken out. But the Titans have found a bunch of picks, and now they're collapsing onto Choyobin. The problem is, by hard committing onto Choyobin, they've put themselves in a very weird position where there's Twilight and Haxel are just out here on their own, and there's 3 players in the back. So the Titans have kind of split themselves up pretty fiercely, but they managed to coordinate and get back to the right position. So all is not totally lost. But you can see both teams are trying to clutch it, and the tempo is being driven by the Shock. The tempo is controlled by the Titans, but Shock are really forcing the issue. They don't have to force the issue, but they want to, because they don't want to keep trying to fight their way through that tiny little fucking choke point. So if there's any chance of being able to clutch the fight, they want to go for it. Unfortunately, the Titans are just much better. Like, they managed to kill Sinatra at the beginning of the fight. They were able to focus down Choyobin. They managed to dodge line of sight. Both Twilight and Haxel nearly died multiple times, but managed to escape. So this is good play from the Titans. And the Shock are getting very desperate here. This is sloppy, desperate kind of stuff. And I feel so confident that if Shock had run a Bastion, they'd already be on point B with like 4 minutes on the clock. Yeah, these reviews are going to be on YouTube, Reese. How am I on 2 streams at once? I'm a bloody magician. Okay, so 1 minute left. Choyobin swapped over to the Wrecking Ball, but thankfully I believe he's going to swap back. Yes, swaps back to the Sigma, which is the correct play, and it's not what Janu was doing earlier on in this series. Like, you should be Sigma for the final fight. Wrecking Ball doesn't help anything. And Choyobin realizes this and swaps back while there's still time. 50 seconds left though, one final fight. Shock only have this beat available, and the Titans are going to have a Flux with which to force it out, or a Flux with which to punish after the beat is used. And then if the fight goes long enough, they might have their own beat available, or Coalescence or something like that. But the ults are really not that important outside of Shock's beat. And the Gravitic Flux from Janu, of course. The two always working combo in this meta. Haxel goes aggro, doesn't manage to find anything. So Minsu's off on the side. Let's take a look at this final fight. So, Coalescence is used. There isn't a Coalescence available for Twilight. Lot of damage done to Striker, and a nice Gravitic Flux that catches a lot of people. But Moth has already used his sound barrier. So these people need to get the fuck out of there, because Slime doesn't have sound barrier. They have to drop back to the point. They can't hold this high ground, because as soon as these guys get dropped down, you are not going to be able to kill them fast enough, because they've got the beat on them. The beat is going to save them. These guys are going to be still really healthy once they hit the floor. So if So Min-Soo stays in there, and if these guys keep staying in there to try and kill them, They're not going to be able to kill them through it. They slam back down to the floor. The health pool's totally even between the two teams, apart from Striker and Smurf have still got full sound barrier on them. So you can't win just with a gravitic flux against the sound barrier. So they've got to drop back. They've got to give some space. Twilight's just about to get his coalescence, but because Tizzy hasn't dropped back far enough, if he had dropped back onto the point and allowed Janu to protect him with the barrier, he would have survived here and waited for Twilight to get his coalescence. If Twilight had dropped further back to like here and continued to heal people, or even better, if he had dropped out back to like here and continued to heal people, he would have had his coalescence available and wouldn't have died. So both Tizzy and Twilight just overcommitted to a flux versus a sound barrier. And I don't, that to me seems really obvious, that if you flux into a sound barrier, you are not going to win that fight. You have to back off from that fight. The advantage is the team that still has a sound barrier when they hit the floor, at least for a tiny portion of time. But if you still stand really close to them, you're gonna die. So Sinatra ends up dying, but this is over. Now, did the San Francisco Shock deserve to win this fight? Yeah, I mean, the Vancouver Titans made more mistakes than the Shock did, and the Shock had engineered themselves an ult advantage by the way in which they'd taken all the rest of the fights. Was it clutch? Not particularly. The Titans just made mistakes. Did the Shock play all the rest of their fights well? No, absolutely not. But this roll into point B is staggering. Titans, even though they lost point A eventually and weren't able to full hold, they should have a fantastic time bank. Because, alright, you speed it forwards, and there's 3 minutes left on the clock. Honestly, they should be able to tick away the majority of these 3 minutes, and instead they don't tick it away at all, basically. And look at how this ends up breaking for them. Alright, look at this. So you have Sinatra come around the side, and he punches at the same time as these guys go forwards. Now, Tizzy doesn't know what to do. He should be backing up, but instead he stays really aggro and doesn't realize that Slime's just yeeted and disappeared. In the meantime, Striker is on an amazing flank, and nobody knows. Striker, with this flank, is huge and manages to catch Haxal in the back at the same time as Tizzy gets overrun because Tizzy was too far forwards. So they just get completely caught out in what's essentially a neutral fight. And even though they commit sound barrier to it, they've given up all of this free space. And they can't do anything with the sound barrier because their coordination is miles off. They don't know who they're focusing. They're just running around like headless chicken. Tizzy doesn't even have a barrier up. Tizzy dies as he uses his ultimate. It's just like, it's a car crash for the Titans. It's just really badly played. Nobody was looking for Striker to try and force him out. Nobody helped Haxal. And they didn't realize that they had to kite when they needed to. Is Tizzy's barrier on cooldown, or did he just not put it up? I'll show you what happens. He puts it up, but he puts it up too far forwards, so when he actually needs it, it's on cooldown. Let me show you. Alright, so okay, when they first come in, he thinks they're gonna fight aggressive. He's still using this shield that he already had deployed. The problem is, he puts this shield down here. And this shield is way too far forwards. Because Slime has already been punched away. And Striker's in the back. So, Tizzy is expecting the rest of his team to be able to fight forwards. But then Tizzy looks behind him, and he's like, oh, fuck. Striker's gonna kill Haxal. Sinatra is on Slime. And I'm out on a little island on my own, about to get overrun, because Sominsu's flank has done nothing. So the reason that Tizzy looks like a headless chicken as he's wandering around is that he used his shield, but he just used it too far forwards. But the real key to this fight is not so much Tizzy, in my opinion, even though he loses his ultimate here. It's that nobody's paying attention to Striker. Compare the difference between the two Reapers. So let's follow Sominsu first. So Sominsu TP's up to the high ground. Scouts where they're going. Realizes that they're coming left. We're following this guy on the high ground, by the way. Sinatra comes in for this flank, and Sominsu drops down. So Sominsu has dropped down, but he just saw an enemy Reaper evaporate from in front of him. Because the enemy Reaper is teleporting up here. Haxal wasn't trying to punch Striker, I don't think, there. He was originally charging his punch to see if he could find somebody aggressive, or like counterpunch Sinatra. But then when he realized he couldn't, he turned around, saw somebody teleporting, and went for it. But it was mistimed. Like, the original intention was not to catch Striker, so the timing was off. Actually, I'm not even sure whether he saw him teleporting. I assumed he did. Otherwise, you just cancel the punch, probably. But maybe he just wanted to get out. Maybe Haxal's the only person with the brain and realized that they needed to back up. But Striker in the backlines here, like, nobody pays any attention to him, because instead they're trying to peel Sinatra away from Slime. It's 10 your time. How's the CNC VOD going? I don't know. Let's have a look.
Your ship is battered, it's bruised, the mast is barely working, but you seem to be getting near to the end of the storm itself.
Hey, it's me.
And you're riding your way out. Now, your ship is damaged. It's wildly off course from what you can tell as well, from where you were originally going to be going. Again, Gilbert was the only one who knew where you were going as well. So, as this entire event has taken place, you're all exhausted. So you're all going to take 11.
My hair is crazy on this. By the way, so we started a new Twitch channel, Castles and Castles, which is where our D&D stuff is going to be hosted, but also some board game stuff and a bunch of other things. It's going to be like a channel where there's going to be multiple things running per week, maybe like 2 or 3 days a week. It's going to be live, and there's going to be some really cool shit on there. So give it a follow, and over the next couple of days, it's going to be running reruns of Episode 1. So if you weren't able to catch, not Episode 1, Campaign 1 or Arc 1. So we're going to be starting up Castles and Castles again on the 22nd, which is next Tuesday. And between now and next Tuesday, every day, we're going to be running at least 1, sometimes 2 episodes of Castles and Castles on there at 7 PM. Okay, I mean, I thought that this was about to finish, but I don't think it is about to finish, so I'm just going to put it on a side window. Off-season non-Overwatch channel? Yeah, exactly. Okay. Okay, so, yeah, this ends up working very poorly for them, and they end up losing this fight. So, let's take a look at what happens the second time around. This time around, the Vancouver Titans are on the offense, and for some reason, Shock decides to run the Mei, as if they are thinking that Vancouver are going to run a Bastion. But I don't think that Vancouver are ever going to run a Bastion. So this seems very strange to me. They're forced to play very aggressive because they're playing with a Mei. The whole point is that you wall people off, which means that you have to play more aggro than if you have a Doomfist. So that's all making sense. And they get value out of it.
60 seconds remaining.
The Titans have a better comp as long as they're able to get in through this first checkpoint and don't get walled off here. Otherwise, Haxal should be able to kind of go to work. The issue is that they kind of get stuffed a couple of times, I think. Or did they win this fight? I can't actually remember. Okay, so a halt into a coalescence does quite a bit of damage at the beginning. Smurf takes a shit ton of damage. rock from above. Now that we're in this kind of position, the Mei walls don't really do that much. Doomfist is just a better hero. Triple uppercut, gets a lot of shields for Haxal, a lot of damage as well, a lot of CC. Choyobin getting really weak, he ends up dying. I don't know why Shock ran the Mei, and I don't know why Shock didn't run the Bastion on point A offense. So I think these are the strategically questionable plays on Anubis. 40 seconds left.
New defense point. Objective B
Is my will.
30 seconds remaining.
Tizzy gets chased onto the low ground. Beat manages to catch a couple of people. Not the Beat. The Flux. But when they push aggressive with the Beat, they're not really able to find people. The Shock are going to win this. They've got people available. Tizzy dies. This kind of shit. Yada yada. They weren't able to get a tick. So, the San Francisco Shock with 2 minutes left. What should they do? I mean, in my opinion, they should run a Bastion, which is what I said at the beginning of the previous round as well. But as far as I remember, they don't run the Bastion. I think they frustrated me again, and they decided to run this. Now, I don't know why you would run this comp again when you had so many difficulties against Titans running the mirror. I don't know why you would do it. It doesn't seem to make sense to me. But, as miracles would have it, the Shock made necessary adjustments to be able to take this. So let's take a look at what some of those adjustments were. Axel charges up a punch, cancels it. Hulk comes in, a lot of damage being done to Smurf. Janu plays forward with his kinetic grasp but gets punched backwards. Big slam into the backlines. Haxal tries to counter slam Sinatra, but they don't manage to do it, and Tizzy gets run over. So what the fuck happened there? What the hell? What's going on? Why am I so far back? Okay, what the fuck? So basically, the adjustment was that Haxal ended up playing to counter Sinatra, whereas Sinatra played like Haxal normally does. And that, to me, is the biggest difference between the two. Also, Sominsu, I don't think, went for a flank. Like, if Sominsu was going for a flank right now, as they pushed forwards, they'd have a lot more success. But with Janu getting pushed so far back, and then Sinatra going into the back lines, and Sominsu gets pressured away. Like, Sominsu should have been going for a flank. He should have tried to TP up here or something like that. Or even been hiding up here and just dropped down to go for the attack. Haxal doesn't get any value. He doesn't punch the tanks once. He's just trying to hurt Sinatra and fails. And they get run over. So, they kind of swap playstyles, and it really fucks Titans up. I don't know why they make those kind of adjustments in the after round. But I mean, for Sinatra, it makes sense. He's playing more like Haxal is. He's helping his tanks to get in through the choke point. Good adjustment by the Shock, poor adjustment by the Titans. And as we see, this could have still been a draw, but with 1 minute and 40 seconds left on the clock, we get this. 1 minute 35. Axel goes in. Not able to find anything. They leap from all different directions because they've been given all the space in the world. Titans don't play aggressively here with Haxal. Instead, they hold all the way back here. That allows the Shock to walk in for free. They get Sinatra in the back, they get Striker in the back, and they've totally cut off their front line from their back line. They have just isolated Janu and Tizzy, done a fuck ton of damage to them, and found a position on the point. Now this is This is still winnable for the Titans for sure. Like they end up coming back and dominating. But the Titans already nearly lost that. But just by having their tanks too passive.
60 seconds remaining.
50 seconds left. Ults available for both teams. Alright, so again, very passive positioning from the Titans. They don't want to hold this aggressive like they were doing previously. Punch. Janna gets knocked back. Sinatra helping the tanks. Haxel trying to counter punch. Fucking it up. So another theme from point A. Into the back. The uppercut. Huge onto Janu and Slime. Meteor strike as well. And a great Halt Meteor Strike combo. Doesn't actually get the credit for the kill, but was all in. Does a lot of damage to Tizzy as well. Janu dies. Same kind of stuff, honestly. It's the same stuff again and again from point A to point B. The Titans, once they got to overtime, played passive and played to counter the shock instead of just grabbing it by the balls and playing. It's nerves, trying to make adjustments where none are needed. It's poor. So, a GG in the chat.